Finally, what's new with how the church in Canada is being known to its neighbours? The impression might surprise you, and for that, we're joined by one of Canada's most watched news anchors, Kevin Newman, and director Karen Pinker. And Kevin, let's start with you. Why did you decide to choose the topic Hip to be Holy and take a look at what's happening among youth in Canada?
Well, it's a look at the rise of evangelical Christians in Canada. And that's counterintuitive to a lot of people who aren't familiar with the Christian community. They tend to think that that's something that is unique to America. But I worked in the United States for about 7 years, and when I came back to Canada, I began seeing little pieces of evidence that perhaps the evangelical movement was evolving in Canada as well. And it started with seeing some lawn signs, actually, for the Alpha Club in my neighborhood. And I thought, what is that? So I checked into it a little bit more, and it looked like there was a different kind of Christian church that was just at the very beginning of fruition here in Canada. And so along with Karen, we decided to watch those early days of how these new Christian churches are being born.
Okay, Karen, how did you start to discover the Renaissance? What were you watching that said, I think Kevin's onto something here?
Well, Kevin had seen these signs for the Alpha Club, and then when he came to us at 90th Parallel, we started, I should explain that's the production company, we started looking into this and discovered, in fact, what was interesting, not just the Alpha Club, but was the number of young people who seemed to be comfortable proclaiming themselves as Christians and trying to find their Christianity in a new way. And again, as Kevin says, this was quite counterintuitive. In Canada, you don't expect young Canadians to be so upfront about their Christianity.
And I didn't expect young Canadians to be so visible. I'm looking at a book we've interviewed recently, Reginald Bibby, the sociologist out of Lethbridge, who says actually the number of teenagers who would describe themselves as Christians has dropped dramatically, 20 points down, and in fact there are 32% of Canadian teens would say we have no faith at all. Do you think you've maybe missed a bit of a declining trend here in your documentary, Kevin?
Well, maybe I will address that one, because the problem that both Karen and I had at the beginning of this is that there was so little statistical data that separated out evangelical Christians. I don't doubt at all that there are fewer numbers of young Canadians that identify themselves as Christians, but as you well know, that's a lot of different churches. That's Presbyterians, that's the United Church, that's the Anglican Church as well. And so the overall number is down, but when you look at the census data and when you look at how many pollsters look at their information, and this doesn't mean anything against Professor Bibby, but they don't self-identify either born-again Christian or evangelical Christian. And that's where we began to look at some of the other research that was out there that showed that within the Christian church, that overall absolutely is on the decline in all demographics. The element of it that is growing the quickest is the evangelical side of it.
Okay, and the other element that you highlight is their passion, especially young people's passion, to see people convert. How did that impress you or not impress you?
Well, for me, I think that's the basis of the evangelical mission, is that it's not enough to simply say, to come to church. We will bring the church to you. And I think that is one of the main reasons that it is showing such success at this point, because a generation of boomers has grown up not going to church. They haven't schooled their children in Sunday school and going to church. And so church is the traditional church of four walls is a fairly alien place to great numbers of Canadians. But when you have these churches, these evangelical churches that are reaching out and saying, look, we're going to make the gospel comfortable for you. We're not going to, put you in a pew and make you listen to recitations. We're actually going to try to engage you in a way that is engaging, that speaks to your generation. And I think they're unique in that, and they've been the most successful at that because they have within their belief system the idea that church is something that should be exported and that their ultimate mission is conversion.
Okay, and Karen, you describe this generation that's so intent on that mission, that evangelical mission, not as Generation Y or the net generation, but the disciple generation. What defines a disciple Christian?
I think it's that willingness to go back to what you think of with the very early Christians, that wanting to understand, that wanting to simplify their Christianity, they're wanting to be right on the ground and find someone, some kind of a charismatic figure who speaks to them and understands them, and somebody that they can follow.
Kevin, I want to get back to those groups that attracted you. You guys featured Alpha in a Pub. There's 13,000 of these more intellectual learning approaches around the dinner table to Christianity in Canada. Were you shocked at the size and the scope of that movement?
I was, and like a lot of people who were introduced to the Alpha courses, it's called the Alpha course. I at first thought it was a course on how to live a better life, a more spiritual life, and I think there's a broad market for that in Canada. And it was only when I began to look a little deeper into it that I understood that the history of it was from an Anglican minister in Britain, and that what it was essentially, and I think maybe this is important, is that it was telling the Christian story. There are great numbers of young people in Canada who see other religions in their classroom, whether they're Muslim, whether they're believers in Islam, or whether they're Jews, who have a very keen understanding of what they believe the stories of the Bible are. Christian children, or children who grow up in traditional Christian families who haven't practiced, don't necessarily know the stories. So the Alpha Club, I think, is filling a need of large numbers of Canadians who never heard. I went to Sunday school. I remember the stories, but there are at least one, maybe two generations of people who were never told the stories. And I think that's why there are so many people who are interested in hearing the stories. Now, whether they are converted or whether or not they believe the stories, they just want to know it on an intellectual level, so that when they have discussions with their Islamic friends, that they can say, yes, I understand that's your belief. This is my story.
Okay, 10 p.m. on Global TV Network, Hip to be Holy. From an insider's perspective, thought you did a great job with it, and we're happy to have it on the program. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Lorna.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Stay with us. When we come back, why bother going deeper with the news? My thought in the wrap.